The session of the 33rd Guam Youth Congress is hereby called to order. I call upon Representative Makepeace for the prayer. Please rise.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Blessed God, we ask for your continued grace as we go throughout our days. We ask for your continued strength as we go through these session bills and resolutions. We ask for your guidance as we go through these matters, and we ask for your expertise as we expound upon and deliberate on these matters. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Thank you, Representative Makepeace. I call upon Representative Vicente Blas-Tyran for the national anthem. Thank you, Representative Blas-Tyran. Now I call upon Representative Nico Valencia for the Guam hymn.
Panog ichamoru puritanota antamatunanya itoru ilga. Arai honra, arai gloria, abivayas sempara. Arai honra, arai gloria, abivayas sempara. Torui tempui pas arahita, zangini langit na bendition. Contra peligro, afan sahuham, Zus protectius lango. Contra peligro, afan sahuham, Zus protectius lango.
Now I call upon Representative Jalen Common for the recitation of Inifresi.
Inifrasi ginini mastakilo hinasoku mastakilo ikorasonhu. Zane masfigu na nasinyohu ua frasen maitsadzo bai putehi inengi ikutura ilingwahi I airi ihanu zanitanu tomorrow. Nirin shaku diretu zanazu ustata estua fitma gihilio bipia zanmanau ibendera and guahan.
Please be seated. Mr. Recording Secretary, roll call, please.
Representative Bailey, Representative Blas Tyron,
Esteguizu,
Representative Camacho, Representative Chung, Representative Kamen,
Gagizu,
Representative DeHilig, Representative De Gracia, Representative Flores,
Gagizu,
Representative Gale, Representative Labang,
Present.
Representative Lagman, Representative Lizama,
Present.
Chloe Lizama, Representative Laurel Lizama, Representative Lorenzo, Representative Makepeace,
Present.
Representative Matanani,
Present.
Representative Pareda, Representative Perez,
Present.
Representative Kichitsu,
Kaikiso.
Representative Ujoa,
Present.
Representative Valencia,
Present.
Representative Villanueva,
Present.
Representative Wang, Representative Yabut. Mr. Speaker, there is a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Majority Leader Representative Losarin, you're recognized for the approval of the Legislative Journal dated March 27, 2021.
Sijos Maasi. I move to approve the Legislative Journal dated April 10th, 2021, subject to corrections.
Thank you. There has been a motion to approve the Legislative Journal dated April 10, 2021, subject to corrections. Are there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader is still recognized.
Sijos Maasi. I make a motion to waive items 9 through 12 of the session agenda.
There has been a motion to waive items 9 through 12 of the session agenda. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now on motions. Majority Leader, you're still recognized.
Sijos Maasi. I move that bill number 8-33, or what number? Sijos Maasi. I move that bill 6-33 and resolutions 7-33 through 9-33 be deemed to have their first reading.
There has been a motion that all bills and resolution on today's session agenda be deemed to have their first reading. Are there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are still recognized.
Sijos Maasi. I make a motion that all members not present for today's session be excused.
There has been a motion that all members not present for today's session be excused. Are there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you're still recognized.
Sijos Maasi. I move to waive items 15 and 16 on our session agenda.
There has been a motion to waive items 15 and 16 on our session agenda. Is there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. We are now in motion. Representative Nolan Flores, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill number 6-33 in the third reading file.
There has been a motion to place Bill number 6-33 to the third reading file. Is there any objection? Seeing or hearing no objection, motion carries. Representative Flores, you may start on your opening statement.
Sijos Maasi, Mr. Vice Speaker. Bill 6-33 was something that was introduced in the 32nd Guam Youth Congress. It essentially seeks to remove barriers to voting, to voter registration for our youth who have historically had the lowest voter turnout among age groups. And I believe it's a very timely measure due to the fact that the 2020 election, the most recent election, with all its challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also with the adaptations with the election process that we saw with early voting, still saw the lowest voter turnout ever in our island at 40%. So this measure seeks to really remove barriers to voting for our youth, a group that should be very high in their voting rate, a group that should not be voting less than their adult counterparts or less than the oldest age group in Guam, but a group that should be actively involved in our politics, in our government, and to drive the notion that our youth do in fact make up the government and do in fact are affected by the actions of our government, of our leaders, and all those within it. So yes, this bill seeks to do that by implementing automatic voter registration in Guam public high schools, the Guam Community College, and the University of Guam. It does so by mandating that in high schools, students upon graduation, before being conferred their degree, are provided the opportunity to register to vote. So it becomes the school principal's responsibility to furnish a voter registration application and give that student the opportunity. That student is not required to register to vote, Mr. Vice Speaker, just required to be given the opportunity. And this, of course, builds on legislation by Senator Mary Camacho Torres, which implemented automatic voter registration at DMV, so when you go to get your driver's license or your Guam ID. This bill takes a lot of that language, so it's a proven method that is effective in getting more people registered. And then at the university level, at the college level with GCC and the University of Guam, UOG, it does so by requiring that the presidents of each respective college or university, again, provide that application to voters to register, to students to register to vote upon registration for the school. So really it streamlines the process. It makes it so that that first step of actually figuring out how to register to vote is not the hardest step, and it's not a step that's going to prevent a youth from voting, a student from voting. And of course, Mr. Vice Speaker, I'd also like to share that it also complements the registration that is possible, the pre-registration for 17-year-olds who are able to vote once they turn 18 before the general election. So, of course, just a measure designed to make it easier across the board for students to vote. Mr. Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Flores. On the main motion, anyone wishes to be heard? Representative Kishishu, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, I just like to say that I support this bill because when I first registered to vote straight out of high school, I didn't know where to start or what to do or where to go. And I was lucky enough to catch a voter register outside of Sinahanya Payless, out of all places. I think this will really help the youth, especially students who don't know how to register to vote or where to go, prevent being intimidated when you go register to vote. In reality, it's not that hard to register to vote, but I can feel that you do get nervous or confused, or you're just like mamalo to go by yourself to GEC. So I think this will really help them make that next step to be able to vote. Cesar Masi, Speaker Flores, for introducing this bill.
Thank you, Representative Kishishu. Anyone wishes to be heard on the main motion? If seeing none, Representative Flores, you may close on the bill.
Cesar Masi, Mr. Chair. And yes, I left something out in my opening statement, that GCA currently does allow or mandate that school principals identify at least one employee among their staff that is a voter registrar. I'm not sure about DOE's compliance with that, but from my personal experience, it has not been the case. The process for registering to vote wasn't easy. It wasn't about finding a staff within my school. I was actually registered outside of school like Representative Kitsutsu. So this builds on that and ensures that the original intent of that law is sort of carried forward and even expanded to further eliminate barriers to voting. Sizo Sumasi, Mr. Chair.
Representative Flores on the motion.
Yes, dispensadzo. I move to place Bill number 6-33 in the voting file.
On the motion to place bill number 6-33 to the voting file, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Sizo Sumasi, Mr. Acting Speaker. At this time, I'd like to move that Bill 13-33 be heard notwithstanding House rules.
On the motion to place bill number 13-33 to the session agenda, notwithstanding House rules, is there any objection? Please read the title if you can, Mr. Majority Leader.
Sizo Sumasi. One moment. Bill 13-33 is relative. Sorry, one moment. Bill 13-33 is enact to repeal and reenact Article 3, all of Chapter 77, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated, relative to adding minimum qualifications to the Guam Historic Preservation Officer position, and to cite this act as the empowering GHPO Act of 2021.
On the motion, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Representative Flores.
Sizo Sumasi, Mr. Chair. I move to place Bill number 13-33 in the third reading file.
There has been a motion to place bill number 13-33 to the third reading file. Is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Representative Flores, you're welcome to make your opening remarks.
Sizo Sumasi, Mr. Speaker, and a further ndonkluna Sizo Sumasi to my colleagues for recognizing the urgency of this bill and the issues it seeks to help resolve. Just yesterday, the State Historic Preservation Office, the Office of the SHPO, released the preliminary report on the burial sites discovered at the Marine Corps Base construction site, where 12 individual ancestral remains were found during construction. I'd be happy to share this report with you and the body in the Google Drive. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start off by sharing several local news headlines from just the past 9 months. Let me begin. Quote, State Historic Preservation Officer calls for temporary halt on 5th Range. Quote, Guam State Historic Preservation Officer currently on active duty with the military. Quote, GWA Historic Preservation Office partly to blame for project delay added costs. Quote, SHPO says no construction contracts will be signed until resurvey of archaeological sites completed. Quote, agreement between Gov Guam and Navy on historic preservation open for public comment. Quote, Marine Base live fire training range halfway complete, 43 historic sites discovered. And quote, 4 Chamorro burials at Marine Base site 1,000 years old. Mr. Chair, I share these headlines to not only highlight the importance of the Guam Historic Preservation Officer, or GHPO/SHPO, but to also call attention to the many challenges the office has faced within just the past 9 months. For the sake of clarity, it's first necessary to explain the GHPO's relation to the SHPO, the SHPO. The Guam Historic Preservation Officer, as it currently exists, is a classified position within the government of Guam, and the State Historic Preservation Officer is a federally recognized position created by the National Historic Preservation Act, NHPA. According to 21 GCA, Chapter 77, Article 3, the holder of the GHPO position, quote, shall be the State Historic Preservation Officer for federal purposes, end quote. The Guam Historic Preservation Officer, the GHPO, therefore, as prescribed by law, shall be both the GHPO and the State Historic Preservation Officer, the SHPO, one and the same person according to Guam Code Annotated. I will use the terms interchangeably. The GHPO, as the head of the Historical Resources Division of the Department of Parks and Recreation, is a primary government official responsible for advocating for and advancing the people of Guam's interests in the preservation and protection of their historic and cultural resources on all properties, local, public, and federal, private as well. The GHPO, as the SHPO, further serves as the liaison and negotiating representative between the people of Guam and the Department of Defense. The GHPO is responsible for ensuring the military's compliance with such things as the Programmatic Agreement and the National Historic Preservation Act, on top of ensuring the same compliance by private contractors outside the fence, such as with the construction of hotels. In light of these many critical duties and responsibilities, Mr. Vice Speaker, the GHPO and its office have faced many challenges, to include limited funding and personnel resources, vacancies in the position of the GHPO, and issues of accountability and transparency, especially as it relates to military projects. This bill then, Mr. Vice Speaker, is a proactive one that aims to empower the GHPO in their ever-important mission by ensuring that whoever holds the position has adequate knowledge and experience, and perhaps more importantly, can be entrusted by the people of Guam with these duties that are essential to our heritage, our identity, and our collective well-being. This bill does so by adding minimum qualifications for the holder of the GHPO office. Similar to other key positions within our government that require an intimate understanding of a specialized subject area, such as the director of the library, for example, the GHPO must not only be knowledgeable in historic resources, but have a proven record of work in their area of expertise. This bill, again, as a proactive measure, Mr. Vice Speaker, seeks to address recent questions of conflicts of interest within the office of the GHPO. As it relates to the GHPO also being a member of the armed forces, while I nor this body are here to discuss, answer, or debate these particular questions of conflicts of interest, it is both within our purview and our responsibility to proactively prevent, through legislation, any potential conflicts of interest from threatening the mission of the GHPO to our people. And finally, Mr. Vice Speaker, this bill seeks to ensure that the important work of the GHPO is never jeopardized by a temporary vacancy by requiring that any acting GHPO be subject to the same requirements and qualifications as the main holder of the position. Ultimately, Mr. Vice Speaker, this bill seeks to do exactly as its title suggests, empower the Guam Historic Preservation Officer and its respective office with an individual who is highly knowledgeable, proven capable, and free from any potential conflicts of interest. Just as our natural resources of water and land are a source of life for the people of our island, our historical resources are essential to our identity and our collective well-being as an indigenous people, as an island people, and as the people of Guam. We must therefore do our part in ensuring the preservation and protection of these resources. And when we see the failures and challenges of this mission, take steps to proactively address them, not just for the next generation, but for ourselves now and for our people today, the people of the land. Sizos Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Representative Flores. On the main motion on Bill 13-33. Representative Sansi Blasiron, you're recognized.
Sizos Masi. Buenos dias, colleagues, and Sizos Masi for the opportunity to speak on Bill 13-33. The Chamorro people of our island transcend conventional relations, cultivating, growing, and sustaining our home of Guahan for more than 4,000 years. Among those times, we have encountered great struggles, but have always faced obstacles with a strong ardor and unwavering faith in our values of kindness, humility, resilience, and respect. Our ancestors built these pillars to be strong and sustainable. They left legacies of brilliance and their mark is eternally attached to the shores of our island and the identity of their descendants. May we reflect on the great acts they've done and take this step to reaffirm our commitment to protect what they stood for and the remnants of their ancient identity. By supporting this bill, we make a bold but needed statement that will refine the work of the Guam Historic Preservation Officer. We preserve high standards for individuals appointed to this position and inherently maintain the high level of respect and sensitivity needed for such a role to fulfill its duties. The provisions of the bill include specifying further requirements for academic degrees of candidates' position, encouraging academic and research within the field of history, which will serve the GHPO and the acting GHPO as they take on the highly respected working of historic observation and surveying. Our people and our ancestors deserve the utmost respect and reverence, and that will only come by requiring and demanding a uniformity of standards with positions like that of the Guam Historic Preservation Officer. We take this stand to combat the injustices we face from environmental degradation, insensitivity to our culture, our indigeneity, and the lack of regard for the rich heritage of our island. And I'd like to just state that I rise in support of this bill, and I'd like to express a great deal of gratitude to the main sponsor for allowing me to co-sponsor it, and to learn more about the important role that the SHPO plays. And before I end my testimony, I'd also just like to allow the body to reflect on one section of it, and I do support the bill, but if anybody else, or if one may feel a certain way towards the requirement of the SHPO to have a degree in like an historical field, which is specified in one of the provisions. I think that could be something that we should discuss, just because I know that there are current professionals within the government of Guam who may not have majored in a historical field during their undergraduate, graduate years, but are doing work now and have gained a great deal of experience within that realm of work. And so just some food for thought, but thank you, and I support this bill, and thank you to Representative Flores for introducing it. Sitos Masi.
Thank you, Representative Lostaran. Is there anyone else wishes to be heard on Bill 13-33? Representative Coming, you're recognized.
Sizus Maasi, Mr. Vice Speaker. I commend Rep. Flores on introducing this legislation and the opportunity for me to co-sponsor it. This legislation strengthens the qualifications for the position of GHPO in a time of necessity for an unnecessary circumstance. While reasoning behind this strengthening of qualifications is to ensure that the person who holds this position could fully and wholeheartedly defend our culture and our people through preserving our sacred lands and sites. I call this an unnecessary circumstances, as the places that are being under threat are just important as sites such as Gettysburg and Arlington National Cemetery. They are not less, as it holds the same weight to a people and to a nation. One of the provisions of this bill I commend is ensuring that this person in this position will wholeheartedly be committed to their duty and not to country but to island, as it prevents those who are sworn to another and will have a clear conflict of interest, whether they are aware or unaware of it, because of the oaths they have taken to those that the position that they might have to defend against. I urge my colleagues to support this bill to ensure that the holder of this position will carry out to the utmost of their duties to this island, people, and culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Common. Anyone else wishes to be heard on Bill 13-33? Representative Kisuzu, you're recognized.
Cesar Masi, Vice Speaker. I support this bill because of the lack of transparency we have witnessed by the Guam Historic Preservation Office in recent months. A well-knowledgeable individual is needed to be their representative to ensure that the people of Guam are informed about the various projects being conducted on historic sites, especially those with ancestral burials. I hope others can support this bill as well so that secrets are not buried somewhere nobody knows or can find, just like our ancestors who were disrespected that we have not yet known about. Sizos Masi.
Thank you, Representative Quezon. Anyone else wishes to be heard on Bill 13-33? Seeing as there are none, Representative Flores, you're welcome to close.
Sizos Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. And to my colleagues for their co-sponsoring, for those that co-sponsored, as well as everyone who voiced their support in favor of the bill. In my opening remarks, I stated that the acting SHPO just yesterday released a preliminary report from the Marine Base archaeologist on the newly discovered ancestral burials at the Marine Corps Base construction site. I'd like to share some findings from this report. They can also be found in the Google Drive under supplemental materials from the main sponsor. The report states there is evidence of 12 individuals in the 4 graves. There is 1 fetus/young infant, 2 6 to 7-year-old children, 7 adolescent adults, and 2 older adults over 35 to 40 years minimum. These 7 adolescent adults are probably mostly adults over around 25 at minimum and may be much older based on degeneration in dental wear. There is 1 probably female, 2 possible females, and 2 inferred females. There is 1 probable male, 1 possible male, and 1 inferred male. The report continues. The only thing I can tell about the ancestry of the population is that they appear to be Lati period based on betel nut staining to most adult teeth. The site has evidence of complex burial practices. Skulls of 3 individuals are removed, and 1 individual is a secondary bundle burial of both skull and appendicular skeleton. The burn remains appear to be intentional cremations of some kind. 2 burials contain 2 individuals each, an adult cradling a child, and 2 older adults stacked head to foot. Overall, this appears to be in keeping with the historical accounts of allowing remains to decompose and then storing skulls in the home, as well as partial cremation. It is not clear why so many different practices are going on at once, though. Maybe they represent different use periods or different treatments for individuals with different status. End quote. Mr. Vice Speaker, this is what is at stake here. Our very history, the very bones of the people that came before us. Our stories, our very own knowledge of our past, and our very own understanding of ourselves today. With so much at stake, we must ask ourselves, if not us to protect these historical resources, if not our government to protect them, then who? To put it plainly, the military is not in the business of historical preservation or cultural revitalization or protection. Our calls for transparency, accountability, and preservation come second to their mission. We must therefore, through our government and all those within it, most especially the GHPO, and with this bill, put up a concerted fight to protect what is ours and ensure that our stories, thousands and thousands of years old, do not vanish with the scoop of a bulldozer. Mr. Vice Speaker, I only hope that this body recognizes its responsibility for the sake of ourselves, the youth of Guam, Itatautano, and all the people of Guam, to preserve and protect these resources that tell our past stories, inform our present identities, and guide our future. Sizos Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. I move to place Bill number 13-33 in the voting file.
On the motion to place Bill number 13-33 to the voting file, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing no objection, motion carries. We'll take a brief recess.
Just one? The second regular session of Iminat Trantai Tres na Congressman Hoben Guahan is now back from recess. Mr. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to place resolution number 7-33 to the third reading file.
There's been a motion to place resolution number 7-33 in the third reading file. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, the motion carries. Mr. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and fellow colleagues, hearing and watching the news about the rise in attacks and violence against the Asian American community compelled me to write Resolution 7-33. As the attacks against the Asian American community is fueled by false rhetoric that COVID-19 is a Chinese virus. Former President Donald J. Trump racist tweet calling the COVID-19 virus as Chinese virus helped fuel these attacks against the Asian American communities. A study by Dr. Yunan Suen, an assistant professor of epidemiology at University of California, San Francisco, stated that anti-Asian sentiments depicted in the tweets containing the term Chinese virus likely perpetuated racist attitudes and parallels the anti-Asian hate crimes that have occurred since. The study indicated a difference in anti-Asian sentiment when using neutral hashtags such as COVID-19, hashtag COVID-19, versus racist hashtags like hashtag Chinese virus. 20% of the hashtags associated with the hashtag COVID-19 demonstrated anti-Asian sentiment compared to 50% of hashtags to the Chinese virus. With this online conversation, it sparked violence. Anti-Asian hate crimes rose nearly 150% in major United States cities in 2020. According to a new report released by the Center of Study of Hate and Extremism. With these events, I consider that nationalism is a great threat for us. Let us be clear that nationalism and patriotism is not the same. Nationalism is a system that encourages the idea that inclusion and diversity represent weakness, that the only way to succeed is to give blind allegiance to the supremacy of all race over all others. I quoted this from Madam Secretary Elizabeth McCord, and this is a very good explanation of the difference between patriotism and nationalism. I further quote, patriotism, on the other hand, is about building each other up and embracing our diversity as a source of our nation's strength. With this quote, it reminds me of the United States motto of E pluribus unum, out of many one. We envision a community that accepts diversity and that we do not see anyone as different, but identical. President Joe Biden announced new action to respond to the increase in acts of anti-Asian hate violence and to advance safety, inclusion, and belonging for all Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islander communities. President Biden also announced that it is the official policy of his administration to condemn anti-Asian bias and violence. President Biden visited AAPI leaders in Atlanta to denounce anti-Asian violence and gender-based violence with Vice President Kamala Harris and called Congress to pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, introduced by Senator Hirono and Congresswoman Meng, respectively. Furthermore, the Biden-Harris administration created a historically diverse administration in which 15% of all appointees identify as Asian American and Pacific Islanders. In closing, I want to quote Dr. Martin Luther King. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. That's why each one of us has to find the beauty in our differences instead of fear. Listen instead of reacting. Reach out instead of recoiling. It is up to us, all of us. Thank you, and I hope that everyone supports this resolution.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. On resolution number 7-33, is there any other representative who wishes to be recognized? Representative Lazama, you are recognized.
Suzuki Policy, Chairman Flores. In sight of the recent attacks against Asian Americans, President Joe Biden has encouraged law enforcement officials to ban automatic semi-rifles in sight of the mass shooting that took place in Atlanta, killing 8 Asian Americans. And the Biden-Harris administration did not incite any military action against these peaceful protests, whereas former President Donald J. Trump stated, I quote, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts," during the peaceful protests that took place last summer. The Biden-Harris administration issued an executive memorandum aimed at addressing the growing violence against Asian Americans. In the memo, President Biden has also directed all federal agencies and executive departments to ensure documents or statements do not exhibit or contribute to racism, xenophobia, and bias against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Also included in the memo signed by President Joe Biden January 26, 2021, attempted to correct some of the past language that has taken hold during the pandemic, some of it popularized by former President Donald Trump. As someone who is Asian American, Chamorro, and of Hispanic descent, it has been a disgrace to see how former President Donald Trump has spoken and mistreated people of color in this country. I commend the Biden-Harris administration for taking action against the occurring and growing violence that has been aimed at people of color. I firmly believe that we are only equal if we are treated as equal. Suzuki Masi.
Jesus Masi, Representative Lazama. Are there any other representatives who wish to be recognized? Representative Valencia, you are recognized.
I'd like to take this time to thank the main sponsor of this bill for giving me the privilege to also co-sponsor it. Hate crimes against Asian community in America are old and have increased dramatically. It wasn't uncommon for laws to outright ban Asians from coming into the United States. Exempli Gracia, we outright banned the Chinese from coming into California in 1854. It's now 2021, and hate crimes against the Asian community have only increased, with now our Malay, Cambodian, Indo, Thai, Lao, Hangul, and Filipino community being targeted, especially our elders. Recently, I was serving a customer, and she looked at me and asked in her annoyance, "Do you speak English?" That was just 3 weeks ago. Now let's just imagine what could have happened in those 3 weeks, from someone making that snide remark to me to whoever else was less fortunate enough to be in the face of someone who had a gun that just hated them. This support is a necessity in a modern time, and I'm extremely grateful for the proposal of this bill. Thank you for your time.
Jesus Masi, Representative Valencia. On resolution number 7-33, are there any other representatives who wish to be recognized? Representative Blas-Taran, you are recognized.
Jesus Masi. I'd just like to thank the main sponsor and co-sponsors of this resolution. And although I myself am not an Asian American, I think that it should be within us as human beings to look out for one another, to support one another, and to realize that no matter your race or ethnicity, you deserve to be treated with kindness and with respect. I think everyone can relate to the great concern we all have when we see what's happening, not only within the continental United States, but within the subtle and historic nuances of racism here on our island. And it is hard to know that despite how far we've come, how modernized we become as a nation, as an island, we still have to face injustices like this. And it's a great challenge for the Asian American community. And I can't in any way say that I've experienced anti-Asian racism, but I can relate to the concept of racism and being faced with it in general. And so with that being said, I'd just like to express my support for this resolution and urge my colleagues to put aside our differences and our ethnic identifications and look out for each other as human beings, because our Asian American and Asian siblings need us during this time, and so we should be there for them to help them, to assist them, and to help combat the mass amounts of racism they face today. Sizos Masi.
Sizos Masi, Representative Blas Tyron. Resolution number 7-33. Are there any other representatives who wish to be recognized? All right. Mr. Vice Speaker, you are invited to close.
I just want to make one technical amendment, if that's possible. I'm going to upload this after I announce the amendment, but it's on page 3, line 18. Thus hereby on behalf of Youth of Guam expresses condemnation of add the word Asian. Yes.
Representative Makepeace.
Mr. Chair, I call for a quick recess.
All right. The 33rd Guam Youth Congress is now in recess. Iminat Trust na Congressman Hoban Guahan is now back from recess. Mr. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
I just want to take that technical correction. I just want to reiterate the amendment, which is on line 19, page 3. So it will read, thus hereby on behalf of youth of Guam, express its condemnation of anti-Asian hate crimes and be it further.
Mr. Vice Speaker, there is an amendment to amend resolution number 7-33. On the amendment, are there any representatives who wish to be recognized? All right. Mr. Vice Speaker.
Just to vote, please.
The motion passes.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues and those who co-sponsored this resolution, and I just want to move this to the voting file. Thank you.
On the motion to place resolution number 7-33 in the voting file, are there any objections? The motion passes. The 33rd Guam Youth Congress is now in recess.
The 33rd Guam Youth Congress is back from recess. Representative Kuditsu on Resolution 8.
I move to add Resolution 8-33 to the third reading file.
On the motion to place Resolution number 8-33 to the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing no objection, motion carries. Representative Kuditsu for your opening statement.
Cesar Masi, Vice Speaker, for allowing me to speak on behalf of this resolution. Resolution number 8-33 aims to recognize Angel Anthony Leon Guerrero Santos III, also known as Ongit Santos, on his birthday, which falls on April 14. Ongit was a senator, serviceman, organization leader, and an advocate for human rights. If it weren't for his actions and hard work, some of our Chamorro people would not have been given back their land that was rightfully owned to them. Despite many hardships Ongit faced during his active days of fighting for social justice for our people on Guam, he still was able to make big changes for our people and our island. Wise words from Ongit are as follows: generations will come and generations will pass. But if no generation has the conscience, courage, and moral conviction to right the wrongdoings of the past, then the next generation will have to live with the same injustices in the future. His legacy against fighting the injustices on our island is still relevant today and can be seen in many young activists, scholars, and individuals. So it is with a humbled heart that I ask my colleagues to support this resolution and recognizing the late Angel Anthony Leon Guerrero Santos III on April 14 of every year.
Thank you, Representative Kuditsu. Anyone else wishes to be heard on Resolution 8-33? Representative Nolan Flores, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. I'd just like to come out in support of this resolution, resolution number 8-33. When we think of Anghit of Angel Santos, it's inspiration that fills me, inspiration as it relates to our continued quest for self-determination and decolonization. And when we think of his history and all that he's done for our island, and the courage, the strength that he still inspires in many of my peers today, even the generation today that maybe weren't witness to his acts, but still hear about them, still read about them, still feel their effects today. So I come out in support of this, and I'd even hope that we can introduce this further on as a bill that establishes the holiday as one recognized by the government of Guam and in GCA. Sizos Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Flores. Anyone else on the main motion? Representative Vicente Blas-Saron, you're recognized.
Sizos Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. I'd just like to thank my colleague, Representative Kitsu Sandagulina Sizos Masi, for introducing this resolution that will honor one of our local heroes and a forefather for us Chamorros who are involved in activism. Anghit, or Leon Guerrero Santos, was one of the founders of Inasyon Chamorro, which pioneered the indigenous activist movement as we know it today. Not only did, as my colleague mentioned, did he fight for land, but he fought for our right, our inherent right to not only practice our culture, but to embrace our culture and perpetuate our heritage for future generations to come. And I know the history and the actions of Anghit Santos were seen as somewhat radical for the time, but that his mannerisms and his actions led the way and started for something that went far beyond his period of life, and his legacy remains today. As Representative Flores mentioned, when I think of him, I think of a great deal of power, of respect, of responsibility, and he inspires me, and I'm sure he inspires many of us Chamorros to safeguard and protect our heritage and to perpetuate our language, our culture, and everything that makes being a Chamorro beautiful and unique. And so I just ask my colleagues to support this resolution, and if they don't know enough about about our local heroes like Anghit Santos, to look into this, to read more about where you live, who has done great things where you live, and read more about our indigenous heroes who made a change on our island. So, Sizos Maasi, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Representative Vicente Blas-Saron. Anyone else on the main motion? Seeing or hearing none, Representative Kinsusu, you're welcome to close.
Sizos Masi, to all my colleagues who had supported this resolution, I motion to place resolution number 8-33 to the voting file.
On the motion to place Resolution 8-33 to the voting file, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. We are now in recess.
We are now back from recess. Mr. Vice Speaker, you are now recognized.
Mr. Leader, I move to place Resolution 9-33 to the third reading file.
There's been a motion to place Resolution 9-33 on the third reading file. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Leader and colleagues, Resolution 9-33 opposes Bill 73-36 COR introduced in the Guam legislature. Bill 73-36 COR, titled the Hearing Protection Act, paves way to allow gun suppressors, silencers, or mufflers to be legally sold on island. This action will have great impact in our community. Just 24 hours ago, there was a shooting incident in South Carolina where 5 people were killed, including a doctor, his wife, and their 2 young children. Gun suppressor might not be used in this incident, but imagine how if it is used in this incident. With increasing gun violence and mass shooting within the nation, I feel that we should not allow gun suppressor to be in our community. Though this violence are not common in our island, I feel that it is our responsibility to make sure that this extreme violence does not happen. Moreover, we all remember what happened in Columbine in 1999, Sandy Hook in 2012, Stoneman Douglas in 2018, and yet we find ourselves in the same situation where individual within his full rights to own a gun use it to deprive others of their lives. Silencers, again, may not be used in these instances, but it is enough evidence to say that the sound of guns may help others escape the violence and keep themselves safe. Furthermore, I want to thank Speaker Teresa Lahi, the only voice of contention that in the hearing of Bill 73-36 COR. I agree with her sentiments that with what's happening with our community, we all want to hear the gunshots or where the gunshots are coming from, so that law enforcement can be guided on the direction where the gunshots come from. As a future teacher of this island, I want my students to worry about what is on the curriculum and not further safety. I want my students to learn what's on the curriculum and not how to dodge a bullet. Colleagues, Bill 73-36 COR in the Guam legislature may pose an adverse negative effect to our community, and to our community, our school, and our fellow youth. This is why, as representative of the Guam Youth Congress, we must do our duty to oppose this bill. And before I close on the opening statement, I just want to add an amendment to this resolution. It's uploaded on the drive. So it's on the floor amendment folder. It's just to add Senator Pido Terlahi as one of the recipients of the bill, since the bill was referred to this committee, so they could append it to the committee report of the bill.
So there's been a motion to make an amendment to add Senator Peter Chalahi as one of the recipients of the bill. On this amendment, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none,
Motion carried.
the amendment passes.
And also, Mr. Leader, I also want to add Representative Naomi Perez as one of the co-sponsors of the bill. Resolution, sorry.
There's been an amendment to add Representative Naomi Grace Perez's name as a co-sponsor of the bill. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, Amendment passes. Back on the main motion. Would anybody else like to speak? Representative Lasama, you're recognized.
Susan Mossy, Majority Leader, Blas Tyron. As a co-sponsor of the resolution in opposition to the Hearing Act, why should we legalize suppressors? Recently, a comment was made by the president of the American Suppressor Association, Knox Williams, and I quote, "A gunshot is just a gunshot regardless of having a suppressor or not." Logically speaking, in terms of it being a gunshot, most definitely, but in a more practical matter, it isn't. The whole point of a gun silencer is to reduce the noise of the firearm. Yes, there are pros and cons about the Hearing Protection Act, but from my standpoint, in this case, the cons outweigh the pros. What are we necessarily benefiting from silencers? Protecting our hearing, right? I'm going to give a different scenario. If a mass shooting were to occur at a government facility or in a public school shooting, no one in the area would be aware that there is an active shooter in the premises. A silencer would just give the opportunity to the shooter to kill more people. Silencers would also make it more difficult for law enforcement officers to track down the shooter because of how hard it will be to detect where the gunshots are coming from. When we are able to indicate where the gunshots are being fired, it gives more time to law enforcement officials to track down the shooter, and for civilians in the surrounding areas to be given more awareness of an active shooter on the premises, and also gives them more time to protect themselves. Well, you may be thinking, Chloe, there are stricter mandatory background checks on Guam to prevent these mass shootings from happening in the first place. Yes, we do have stricter mandatory background checks here than in the US, but 40% of the firearms purchased are illegally bought from ads online, gun shows, or from an unlicensed gun seller. If we were to legalize gun silencers, we would just be giving the shooter a better opportunity to harm more lives. Silencers would just do more damage than good. Ask yourselves, who would be benefiting from silencers more, us or an active shooter? And would you rather have better hearing, or would you rather prevent more loss of life? There shouldn't be a debate as to which is more important. It's using common sense when we are advocating for silencers to be legalized that we are only endangering more lives. I am all for any person to own a gun. It's part of our Second Amendment right to own a gun. But there are certain restrictions and limitations to it. And no person should walk into a building and start shooting at people because they simply feel like it. And legalizing silencers would just give a window of opportunity for an active shooter to kill more people. Susan Mossy.
Susan Mossy. On the main motion, would anyone else like to speak? Representative Paris, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. I first off want to thank Vice Speaker LeBang for allowing me to be a co-sponsor on this resolution. And I just want to express my full support for expressing opposition to the Hearing Protection Act. I wanted to share with everyone here that I listened in on the hearing for this for this bill, and I wanted to share that I am mainly in support because of public safety. As we know, our students are slowly coming back to school, and with that it means, safety for them in terms of their physical safety, and medical safety is the main concern. And I want to share that in the hearing, I noticed that the supporters of this bill mentioned how criminals do not care as to using suppressors to invoke violence in communities, and I personally think I deem it as hypocritical, as we've seen in the countless school shootings that have happened in our country, how if those who want to invoke violence and have a mission to hurt those in their community, they will do it, and they will find ways not only to get away with it, but to harm as many children, as many innocent lives as they can. I support this opposition because safety of our students is our number one concern, and as a youth representative, I'm here today to urge everyone here as well to understand that students should not be worried about how to barricade the doors or to hide behind windows, but rather how to embrace their education and continue to learn and express themselves in school without worrying about if they have to look out for an active shooter about to harm them and their companions. Thank you.
Susan Mossy. On the main motion, would anybody else like to speak? All right, hearing or seeing none, Vice Speaker LeBang, you're invited to close.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I just want to thank my colleagues for supporting this resolution, and I just want to move it to the third voting file.
There's been a motion to move Resolution 9-33 to the third voting file. Do I hear an objection? Hearing and seeing none, motion passes. We are now in recess.
The 33rd Guam Youth Congress is back from recess. We have exhausted all items in our agenda today. Majority Leader Vicente Blas-Saring, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker. I'd like to make a motion to have second roll call reflect first roll call.
On the motion to have first roll call reflect second roll call, second roll call reflect first roll call, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Majority Leader, you're still recognized.
Jesus Masi, Vice Speaker. I'd like to make a motion
Sorry, we're now on item 19, consideration of daily file. Mr. Recording Secretary on Bill 6-33.
Bill number 6-33 COR, introduced by Representative Flores, an act to repeal and reenact Section 3106, Chapter 3, Title 3, Guam Code, annotated relative to implementing automatic voter registration in public high schools, the Guam Community College, and the University of Guam.
Roll call.
Representative Blas-Tyron.
Hungan.
Representative Blas-Tyron, aye. Representative Common.
Ungan.
Representative Common, aye. Representative DeHelig.
Ungan.
Representative DeHelig, aye. Representative Flores.
Hungan.
Representative Flores, aye. Representative LeBang.
Aye.
Representative LeBang, aye. Representative Chloe Lezama.
Aye.
Representative Chloe Lezama, aye. Representative Makepeace.
Aye.
Representative Makepeace, aye. Representative Matanani.
Aye.
Representative Matanani, aye. Representative Perez.
Aye.
Representative Perez, aye. Representative Kichicho.
Again.
Representative Kichicho, aye. Representative Ujoa.
Aye.
Representative Ujoa, aye. Representative Valencia.
Ungan.
Representative Valencia, aye. Representative Villanueva.
Aye.
Representative Villanueva, aye.
Bill number 6-33 receives 13 ayes, 0 nays, 11 excused. Bill 6-33 COR hereby passes. Mr. Recording Secretary, on Bill 13-33.
Bill number 13-33 COR, introduced by Representative Flores, Representative Blas Tyron, Representative Kitichul, Representative Dehilig, Speaker Lorenzo, Representative Common, Vice Speaker Labang. An act to repeal and reenact Article 3, all of Chapter 77, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated, relative to adding minimum qualifications to the Guam Historic Preservation Officer position, and to cite this act as the Empowering GHPO Act of 2021.
Roll call.
Representative Blas Tyron.
Hungan.
Representative Blas Tyron, aye. Representative Common.
Hungan.
Representative Common, aye. Representative Dehilig.
Hungan.
Representative Dehilig, aye. Representative Flores.
Hungan.
Representative Flores, aye. Representative Labang.
Aye.
Representative Labang, aye. Representative Chloe Lizama.
Aye.
Representative Chloe Lizama, aye. Representative Makepeace.
Aye.
Representative Makepeace, aye. Representative Matanani.
Aye.
Representative Matanani, aye. Representative Perez.
Aye.
Representative Perez, aye. Representative Kitchitu.
Hungan.
Representative Kitchitu, aye. Representative Ujoa.
Aye.
Representative Ujoa, aye. Representative Valencia.
Hungan.
Representative Valencia, aye. Representative Villanueva.
Aye.
Representative Villanueva, aye.
Bill number 13-33 receives 13 ayes, 0 nays, 11 excused. Bill 13-33 hereby passes. Mr. Recording Secretary, Resolution 7-33.
Resolution number 7-33 COR, introduced by Vice Speaker Labang, Secretary Abbott, Representative Valencia, Representative Villanueva, Representative Chung, relative to expressing a Congression Manhoban Guahan's condemnation of the anti-Asian American hate crimes and commending the Biden-Harris administration's response to anti-Asian violence, xenophobia, and bias.
Roll call.
Representative Blas Tyron.
Hungan.
Representative Blas Tyron, aye. Representative Common.
Hungan.
Representative Common, aye. Representative Dehilig.
Hungan.
Representative Dehilig, aye. Representative Flores.
Hungan.
Representative Flores, aye. Representative Labang.
Aye.
Representative Labang, aye. Representative Chloe Lizama.
Aye.
Representative Chloe Lizama, aye. Representative Makepeace.
Aye.
Representative Makepeace, aye. Representative Matanani.
Aye.
Representative Matanani, aye. Representative Perez.
Aye.
Representative Perez, aye. Representative Kitchitu.
Hungan.
Representative Kitchitu, aye. Representative Ujoa.
Aye.
Representative Ujoa, aye. Representative Valencia.
Hungan.
Representative Valencia, aye. Representative Villanueva.
Aye.
Representative Villanueva, aye.
Resolution 7-33 receives 13 ayes, 0 nays, 11 excused. Resolution 7-33 hereby passes. Mr. Secretary, Resolution 8-33.
Resolution number 8-33 COR, introduced by Representative Kitchichu, relative to recognizing April 14 as a holiday to recognize and memorialize the late Angel Anthony Leon Guerrero Santos III.
Those in favor of Resolution 8-33, please raise your hand. Please vote by raising your hand. Resolution 8-33 receives majority support. Resolution 8-33 hereby passes. Mr. Secretary, Resolution 9-33.
Resolution number 9-33 COR, introduced by Vice Speaker Labang, Representative Chloe Lizama, Representative Flores. relative to expressing the opposition of Ikengresun Manhoban Guahan to Bill number 73-36 COR, the Hearing Protection Act, as introduced in Imina 36 na legislaturan Guahan.
Roll call, please.
Representative Blas Tyron.
Hungan.
Representative Blas Tyron, aye. Representative Common.
Hungan.
Representative Common, aye. Representative De Hilig.
Hungan.
Representative De Hilig, aye. Representative Flores.
Hungan.
Representative Flores, aye. Representative Labang.
Aye.
Representative Labang, aye. Representative Chloe Lizama.
Aye.
Representative Chloe Lizama, aye. Representative Makepeace.
Aye.
Representative Makepeace, aye. Representative Matanani.
Aye.
Representative Matanani, aye. Representative Perez.
Aye.
Representative Perez, aye. Representative Kitutsu.
Hungan.
Representative Kitutsu, aye. Representative Ujoa.
Aye.
Representative Ujoa, aye. Representative Valencia.
Hungan.
Representative Valencia, aye. Representative Villanueva.
Aye.
Representative Villanueva, aye.
Resolution 8-33 receives 13 ayes. Sorry, correction. Resolution 9-33 receives 13 ayes, 0 nays, 11 excused absence. Resolution 9-33 hereby passes. We are now on item 20 of our agenda, which is brief extension of remarks. Anyone wishes to be recognized? Representative Nolan Flores, you're recognized.
Mr. Vice Speaker, I'd like to thank the entire body as well as the co-sponsors and all those who came out in support of both Bill number 6-33 and Bill number 13-33. Especially as it relates to Bill number 6-33, it sends a clear message to our government, our island leaders, that our youth must be involved more in the governance of our island and more in the election process and the political process. And then in regards to Bill number 13-33 as well, I'm very grateful for our body's knowledge and understanding of their responsibility as the youth to really take charge on these issues related to our cultural resources, our historical resources, ones that once they're gone, once they're bulldozed or destroyed, that we never have them again. We never have the stories that they carry, the identity that they carry, and everything they tell us about ourselves. And of course, as we continue our struggle related to the military buildup, despite all the opposition that our community puts up in the military's continuance, we need to remember that this is an issue directly caused by our political status and our status as an unincorporated territory. And the fact that the military only has to talk to us and not get our approval. They really don't need our approval to do any of the actions they're doing. It's merely a way of making it seem that they are in fact addressing our concerns, when in reality, many of our concerns go unaddressed, and many of our resources, whether it be cultural, environmental, end up destroyed, end up contaminated by the military's actions here in Guam. So we need to keep that in mind and encourage everyone to become more knowledgeable on issues of the buildup and go and see what's occurring up north and throughout the island in terms of the construction, the clearing of vital limestone forests that the military recognizes to be crucial to the importance or to the sustaining of endangered species, of native species to Guam that are still trying to find their footing in our island, yet the military is destroying their habitat. And finally, of course, Ms. Fensa. And finally, of course, I'd just like to invite my colleagues to really think about these issues and talk to people within your groups, within your communities, and get them to care about it. Because like I say in my closing remarks, if it's not us, then who is it? Who will protect what we have?
Thank you, Representative Flores, for that very important remarks. Anyone else on brief extension of remarks? Seeing none, we're now on announcements. Anyone have an announcement? Okay. Representative Valencia, then Representative Perez.
Thank you. I'd like to take this time for all of us present or watching to learn about the deceased former Commissioner of AGAT, Mr. Antonio Terlahi. Commissioner Terlahi was a leader in DOE, Department of Commerce, Commercial Port, and was a caring person who is renowned in the southern community of Guam for his amazing and charitable work. Commissioner served AGAT from 1977 to 81, and was even a survivor of the grueling rice labor camps during the Japanese occupation. For my generation, at least, he fathered and grandfathered some of the most sincere aunties, uncles, and friends, and he will be celebrated for his work in person. It would be greatly appreciative at this time we could offer a moment of silence for him and prayers given to the Terlahi family.
Thank you, Representative Valencia. Representative Perez.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to share a campaign that the Academy is working with. Heads Up Guam is a local campaign that started in April 2019 to spread awareness about the dangers of distracted driving. The students at my school are working with the Insurance Association of Guam to promote driving safely with the united message, put your phone down while driving, distractions won't get you there. The students invite everyone to post and share their awareness via social media and to follow at Heads Up Guam on Facebook and Instagram. The students also encourage everyone in our communities to take an active role in keeping Guam's roads safe by committing ourselves and our loved ones to eliminate distractions while driving. Let's all keep our heads up and phones face down while on the road because distractions won't get us where we need to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Perez. Anyone else on announcement? Representative Vicente Blastaran.
Cesar Smasi, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to just extend a big thank you to those who helped out with the Tuha's Easter drive-through. It was a very successful event, and we are glad that the community of Tumaning, Tuman, and Harmon is glad that we can provide, little goodies to make this time seem a bit more fun for our kids and the children of our village. Additionally, I'd also like to say that there will be upcoming vaccination clinics in the Tumaning Senior Center, and I'll put the announcement in the chat because I can't recall the date right now. Additionally, there is, according to the mayor, from when Representative Gale and I attended this Thursday's Municipal Planning Council meeting, it seems like the situation and the issue of stray dogs within our village is being handled more and more. I mean, they said that they picked up over 64 stray dogs just within our village alone. And they said that there was a lot more that they could have picked up. And so it's good to know that those issues are being handled by the mayoral administration, especially with the stray dog population on Guam. So, Sijos Masi.
Thank you, Representative Vicente Blastaran. Anyone else on announcement? Representative Flores, you're recognized.
Sijos Masi, Mr. Speaker. Pertahili Texan Save Retidian are holding a candlelight vigil at Retidian today at 5 p.m. It's in light of the clearing of the limestone forest in the north and the discoveries of the ancient burial sites, as mentioned in Bill 13-33. And also, next week, I'm sorry, give me a second here. Next week, Wednesday, there's a public hearing for Resolution 55-36, which is relative to reaffirming our human right to safe drinking and clean water in observance of World Water Day 2021, and recognizing the importance of protecting our northern Guam lands aquifer and precious water resources and ensuring the health of our people. And I'd just like to invite my colleagues in the spirit of the discussion today and Bill number 13-33 especially to provide testimony in support of this. The resolution, it takes a stance against the live fire training range complex being built up north and its potential for water contamination. So I'd just like to invite my colleagues to provide testimony, whether oral or written, and I'm hoping to provide testimony as well. Sijos Masi.
Thank you, Representative Flores. Anyone else on an announcement? I have an announcement. So, just first, National Volunteers Week will be on April 19 to 23. So, AmeriCorps programs are having some activities in that week. And I hope that you all participate. And also, vaccination clinics for everyone who's watching is for 16 years old and older. Please go get your vaccine so that we can get to normalcy. And of course, since it's Youth Month, there's some Youth Month activities that's happening throughout the month of April. So if you guys can participate, please do so. And from the leadership, next session, we're planning to have a small group activity, and I hope that you all could make it. Okay, so that's all. Mr. Leader, for the motion to adjourn.
Cesar Masi, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Subject to the call of the Speaker.
There has been a motion to adjourn this session subject to the call of the Speaker. Is there any objection? Seeing or hearing now, we are adjourned.